Tonight we are going to be breaking down the first couple pages of the Flash and FlashCoin Go Faster white paper, working with them on promoting their project, which is I'm very excited about. It's the fastest cryptocurrency I've used so far. They have an awesome wallet, which I'm also very excited about the wallet and the different aspects that and potential it has that none of the other wallets that I've used has. So not only is, like I said, it's the fastest crypto, but the marketplace, the peer-to-peer marketplace, and in-app exchange, peer-to-peer exchange is a super cool feature that they have done, and I haven't seen in any other apps or wallets yet. So pretty cool that they implemented that into their wallet. You can get into there and check out the HTM feature, which allows you to trade, as I said, in peer-to-peer exchange for a few different cryptocurrencies in there. You can trade for Flash Dash, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and there could be another one that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but yeah, it's pretty amazing what they've been able to do with that. So definitely going to help their the spread of that wallet. It's in the App Store, Google Play Store, and the iOS Apple Store. Under CoinNodes, CoinODES, Flash wallet. So go ahead and download that, check that out. But first, today I'm going to break down some of the first, most important things in the first couple pages of the their white paper. Their abstract and stuff. What they've done is they implemented a new delegate-based consensus model called Flash Consensus. If you want to read this for yourself, it's over at flashcoin.io. FlashCoin retains a decentralized spirit of cryptocurrency by relying on elected delegates to rapidly reach blockchain consensus and ensure security. Every user will be able to use FlashCoins to cast for votes for delegates. Delegates will vote on network matters such as transaction fees and miner selection. So this is how they're keeping transaction fees down so low, and while maintaining fast transactions. Delegates elect 25 miners who create new blocks on the blockchain. Rather than using proof of stake or proof of work to secure the chain, FlashCoin controls the ordering of block generation rights by providing each miner with a specific time slot during which they can mine a block. When a miner creates a block on the chain, that block serves as a vote indicating legitimacy. This new delegate model maintains network security, as I was talking about, while simultaneously enabling high transaction throughput, the speed of the transaction. The FC algorithm also introduced a new concept called consensus height, CH. CH refers to the moment when greater than 50% of elected miners have created a block on top of any given block in the chain. When this happens, consensus has been achieved and a block is considered legitimate. So there are three different types of entities on the Flash network. Normal users is the first, delegates is the second, and delegates are broken into two subcategories, elected delegates and permanent delegates. The third is miners. Normal users, just like in Bitcoin, there are no on-chain user identifiers, just UTXOs controlled by pseudo-anonymous addresses. Any Flash address holding at least one FlashCoin is considered a normal user for the purpose of this discussion. Elected delegates are elected by normal users. Delegates must run for election by staking a minimum of 1 million Flash and providing information about themselves, including a delegate ID. Users use the coin they control to vote delegates into office. Once elected, delegates can vote on matters relating to the Flash network. Each delegate places votes which are weighted based on the amount of Flash they've staked, the amount of votes they've received, how long they've been in office, their seniority. Delegates are elected for a period of 30 days at a time. Votes for the delegates can be cast at any time, but they are only evaluated once every 30 days during re-election. There are a maximum of 151 delegates, total sum of elected and permanent delegates. If there are more than 101 nodes running for election as an elected delegate, then the top 101, based on the criteria above, will be elected. Delegates must stake their coin to begin running for election, and their coin must remain staked for the entire election period. Third parties may also stake coins for any given delegate, but those stake coins are locked up for the entire election period and term. Delegates can remove themselves from the running for the next election cycle at any time, but their coins must remain staked during the current cycle. Delegates will be automatically removed from the office if they become inactive. Delegates receive a portion of the network transaction fees as compensation for their duties. So there's the incentive behind being a delegate. Permanent delegates. Of the 151 delegates, 50 are permanent, who do not require voting via elections. These permanent delegates are otherwise the same as elected delegates. They must stake a minimum of 1 million Flash. Their vote weight is based on the same factors. They can be minors. They are compensated the same and have the same requirements. The only difference is that the minimum staking requirement to mine is 1 million Flash instead of 2 million Flash required by elected delegates. Permanent delegates do not have to run for election. Permanent delegate positions are held initially by those who have contributed to the strength and well-being of the Flash ecosystem. These positions are transferable. If a permanent delegate does not stake the required minimum of 1 million Flash or becomes inactive, they maintain their position as a permanent delegate but cannot act as a delegate until in good standing or until this role has been transferred to someone who meets the above requirements. So that is how they have constructed the consensus model, which they call the Flash consensus. And I think it is a very good model because of the structure, the way they structured it. It allows for the speed of the network to be maintained despite more people onboarding. I think it'll be overall better in the long run. As more people get into Flash, you won't see the network congestion that you saw in past bull cycles in Bitcoin, for example, where the network gets clogged up, or Ethereum. So that is the first part of this breakdown. Next, I'm going to get into the mining situation. Into the mining, only delegates can become miners, and they do so by signaling that they wish to be a miner by gaining support from their fellow delegates in the form of votes and by having staked a minimum of 2 million Flash. The minimum staking to mine for permanent delegates is initially set at 1 million Flash. Delegates are therefore responsible for voting in high quality and trustworthy miners. So a lot of this is relying on people being educated on knowing who to trust in the system and who's been around, and putting your staking the success of this project in those people, and that it was intended to be upon. Delegates are therefore responsible for voting on high-quality, trustworthy miners. The number of miners is kept low at a minimum of 25 in order to support high block rates across the network and high transaction throughput. The larger the mining pool, the less efficient it becomes, which is why Flash's limited miner count is an optimal balance between security and performance. Miners receive a portion of the network transaction fees as compensation for their duties. Transaction fees. At network bootstrapping, there will be a default fee of 0.001 Flash per kilobyte, with a minimum fee of 0.33 Flash. The transaction fee rate at minimum are the parameters that delegates can vote on. Transaction fees are collected per block by the miners. but rather fees are not collected per block by the miners, but rather fees are collected once each day and distributed to both miners and delegates. I like that a lot. Staking mechanics. In order to run for election, one must create a flash address to represent their node. The candidate will then be identified by that address, and the actions they take will be signed with the associated private key. To enter the election, the candidate can use the QT wallet to create and broadcast their node's registration form along with their flash stake. All registrations and stakes are sent to a special election address from which the network will not allow spending except to return the stake coins back to the sender at the sender's request. Strict rules are enforced on the acceptance and return of funds to and from the special election address. Delegates must stake a minimum of 1 million flash to register for election. The more coins staked, the higher probability they will become elected. The more influence they will have on future votes, and the more rewards they will receive. Additional stake contributions can be made for a delegate by any person at any time. However, all stake funds remain locked for the entire election campaign, as well as for the subsequent election terms, assuming that the delegate is elected. Voting mechanics. Every transaction has the opportunity to vote for a delegate by prepending a zero-value transaction output to that transaction that uses the op-return opcode followed by new voting-related opcodes and data. Voting-related op-return transaction outputs must always be the first transaction output. The sender of a transaction is able to use the op-return metadata to specify which delegates receive how much of the transaction's voting power. The QT wallet will make managing a user's votes as easy as possible by showing which coins in their wallet are voting for which delegates and which coins are not voting at all, and automatically managing the casting of the votes according to the configuration specified by a user. Voting is not required in a transaction, but it is encouraged for the security of the network. Like I said, you are everyone who's in the position to vote is important to the entire process and security of the network. This method, where the sender sets the voting metadata, has an unfortunate side effect on the user experience. Every time a person receives flash, they will need to send it back to themselves along with their vote if they want that flash to be used to vote in a different way than the sender specified. The QT wallet can be configured to do this automatically so that it's barely noticeable by a user. This is an annoyance and will generate some redundant transactions as users send funds to recast votes, but this method allows for a dramatically more efficient accounting and scaling for the voting system than any other method. The need to resend transactions to recast votes can also be leveraged to combine transactions to reduce the UTXO set. Voting done by delegates on matters relating to the network are handled differently than using user votes. When a delegate votes, they send a transaction to a special voting address with data attached indicating what they are voting on and what their vote is for. No FlashCoin need to be sent to vote, however, normal transaction fees do apply. A delegate's vote can come from any address, but the vote data must be signed by the delegate's private key. Again, to keep everything in line. Mining mechanics. Miners are elected by delegates and only delegates, elected or permanent with the requisite minimum flash staked, can become a miner. Delegate votes for miners with their vote weight, which is derived from coin stake, user votes, and seniority, and they spread their vote weight over as many or as few miners as they like. The top 25 miners scored by accumulated vote weight in the ballots become the elected miners. If any elected miner is identified as a bad actor or as an unreliable node, then delegates can update their votes and remove that bad miner in one block, which is also a beautiful thing. Before things get out of hand, miners must maintain an accurate system clock and have a low latency and high bandwidth network connection in order to effectively participate as a miner. The system is tuned to generate a block every 5 seconds. However, when the network is idle, then no blocks need to be emitted. Clock skew in the block's timestamp will have a maximum allowance of plus 4 seconds in the future, and no block can have a timestamp earlier than the block before it. When a miner creates a block, they place their delegate ID in the Coinbase transaction for identification purposes along with the signature to prove it is them. There is no block reward for miners to claim, no per block transaction fees to claim, and therefore no incentive to mine blocks as fast as possible. Block difficulty is fixed at a very low value so that there is no hash power arms race. Any modern CPU can hash a block in under a second. Amazing. To secure the blockchain, strict rules are enforced to control the order in which elected miners are allowed to create blocks. Each elected miner is assigned a signal 5-second window in which they can create a block if a block is needed, and then the next miner in the list gets their own 5-second window. This ordered time slot assignment prevents conflicts over who will mine the next block, thereby reducing the amount of bandwidth and processing that is usually wasted in high block rate networks as conflicting chains are passed around and evaluated. This time slot assignment also ensures that every elected miner has a fair chance to create a block. And then it breaks down some of these, exactly how all of this works. Into that, there's a list of currently elected miners that is maintained by each node, and then it is updated as miners are voted in and out. A miner's position in the index is elected miner array that corresponds to that miner. When a miner is checking whether it can mine at any given point, it passes its own position into the can it mine function. When a node is evaluating a block for correctness before acceptance, it passes the position of the miner who mined that block into this function along with the timestamp from that block. That's pretty typical. Because each block creation asserts that the creator believes that the chain of the block before it is true and accurate, each block mined is effectively a vote by the miner on what the correct chain is. At any given time, there is a consensus height, a block height at which consensus has been achieved by greater than 50% of the elected miners, and this consensus height increases as new blocks are mined. For any given block B, if greater than 50% of the miners in the elected miner pool have created a block in the chain above B, then the consensus has been achieved for B, and all the transactions in and before block B are guaranteed to be final. That's how you reach consensus. The consensus height then is at B. All transactions included at or below the consensus height are considered finito, finished, final. And all transactions above the consensus height are in the process of being finished, finalized. Confirmations are no longer a measurement of how many blocks have been built on top of the given transaction's block. Instead of confirmations is a measure of how many elected miners have mined a block on top of that transaction's block, divided by how many miners are needed to achieve consensus. Therefore, confirmations is effectively the percentage of consensus a given transaction or block has achieved. Given a transaction T, which was included in block B, if 20 blocks were built on top of block B by 10 unique miners from the 25 pool of elected miners in T, and all the other transactions in B have a consensus percentage of 10 blocks, 25 in the pool, 0.5 for consensus equals 0.8 consensus equals 80 confirmations. Once a transaction has reached or exceeded 100 confirmations, then it is final and there is no risk of being rolled back in a double spend. All calculations and readouts for confirmations will be kept at 100 to reduce confusion. As long as an attacker is not able to compromise more than 50% of the elected miner pool, doubtful. Double spending of a given transaction is impossible once a consensus height has reached or exceeded that transaction's block. If all the elected miner pool remains online and mining blocks, and transactions will be finalized within approximately 65 seconds. Greater than 50%, 25 miners, 5 blocks, 65 seconds. All valid transactions will be included in blocks within 10 seconds. 5-second blocks times 2, 10 seconds. If all parties involved are trustworthy, then that transaction may be actionable by the recipient with the confirmation by just a single miner. 5 seconds average, 10 seconds max. For guaranteed finality when dealing with entrusted parties, the recipient should wait 100 confirmations, which should take about 55 seconds, as said. For comparison, pure proof of work and proof of stake never provide guaranteed transaction finality without centralized checkpointing. So that breaks down the majority of the mining, and I'll get into the rest of that in blockchain fork resolution next.